Good morning, children. The previous video for accounting for companies, issue of shares for cash at par and premium was uploaded, and I hope you all have gone through it carefully and made a note of it. Today, our topic of discussion in the chapter issue of shares is oversubscription of shares. Now, let us first understand what is the meaning of this word oversubscription of shares. It means that when the public applies or subscribe for more number of shares than what has been issued by the company, or in simple words, oversubscription means the shares issued by the company is less and shares subscribed by the public is more. Now if you see the language here, it says shares are said to be oversubscribed when the shares applied are more than the shares offered for subscription. Since the company cannot allot shares more than the shares offered for subscription, shares can be allotted by any of the following three alternatives. So, when the number of shares applied by the public is more than the number of shares issued by the company, it is a case of oversubscription of shares. Now, according to companies law, no company can allot even a single share more than what it has issued to the public for subscription. So what will happen is we need to adjust those number of shares oversubscribed, and to adjust these oversubscribed shares there are three alternatives. The first alternative says rejection, refund of excess applications. We can say to reject the shares which have been oversubscribed. Then the second alternative is partial or proportionate allotment of shares. Partial or pro rata allotment of shares. And the third alternative says partial refund and proportionate allotment of the remaining shares, which is a combination of alternative 1 and 2. To understand these three alternatives, I will explain you with the same question which we took in the beginning in the previous video, where ABC Limited issued 10,000 equity shares of rupees 100 each, and in that question I will make one change, and that change is that the applications were 20,000 shares accepted, whereas the issue was for 10,000 shares. What I mean to say is the company issued 10,000 shares, but the public applied for 20,000 equity shares, which means number of shares oversubscribed will be 10,000. So we need to adjust these oversubscribed shares, and that we will go and see with the question as a solution. So we move ahead with all these three alternatives, taking one by one, and then see the treatment. So I have again shown that same question. ABC Limited issued 10,000 equity shares at rupees 100 each, payable as follows. On application, rupees 20 per share. On allotment, rupees 30 per share. On first call, rupees 25 per share. On second and final call, rupees 25 per share. Now the change is, instead of fully subscribed 10,000 shares, I have written here applications were received for 20,000 equity shares. Children, this 20,000 is the change in the question from the previous illustration which we discussed. Now the question is framing and saying show the accounting treatment for oversubscription in all the three alternatives which we have just discussed above. The one is refund or rejection of excess shares. Number 2, pro rata allotment to all the applicants. Number 3, partial refund and proportionate allotment to the remaining applicants. The combination of case 1 and case 2. So keeping everything else from the previous question same, we have just made one change in this question which says applications were received for 20,000 equity shares. So we are going to see the first alternative of adjustment under oversubscription, that is refund or rejection of excess shares, by solving this question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss only those entries which are going to be affected with this change in the question. Remaining all remains the same. So whatever is the change is highlighted by red ink in the solution. So the first entry in this alternative one will be bank account debit to equity share application account, being application money received on 20,000 equity shares at rupees 20 per share. So the change is, instead of 10,000 shares previously, now it is 20,000 applications. So which makes rupees 4 lakh for debit and rupees 4 lakh for credit. Whereas in the previous question in the video, it was 2 lakh because it was on 10,000 shares. I hope you have understood the change. The second entry will be equity share application account debit 4 lakh to equity share capital account 2 lakh to bank account 2 lakh, being application money transferred to equity share capital on 10,000 equity shares and money refunded on remaining 10,000 equity shares. So children, this is the change. Since the applications have been received for 20,000 shares, which is 4 lakh rupees, the company can allot only 10,000 shares to the 10,000 applicants. So that 10,000 shares multiplied by 20 rupees will be transferred to equity share capital and the amount will go 2 lakh. And the remaining 10,000 shares multiplied by 20 rupees will be refunded, and so the entry goes to bank account 2 lakh. This is a compound entry, and if I split it into two entry, the first entry becomes equity share application account debit 2 lakh to equity share capital account 2 lakh, and the second entry will become equity share application account debit 2 lakh to bank account 2 lakh. But we must always write this compound entry together. This is what the trend is, to write it together, because when it comes in exam it only carries 1 mark. So I hope you have noticed the change. The change is in red ink: 4 lakh, 4 lakh, 4 lakh to bank account 2 lakh. This is how the change will be there in first and second entry, and after this the entire entries are the same what we have discussed earlier. Entry number 3, entry number 4, entry number 5, 6, 7 and 8 all remain same as it was in the previous video of our question. So this is the first alternative of refunding or rejecting the excess application money to the applicants. And now we move with the second alternative, which says pro rata allotment or proportionate allotment of shares. So let us go to the second alternative, which is pro rata allotment. Now before we discuss this entry, let us see a small working for pro rata allotment in a fixed specified ratio. So see here, working for adjustment of oversubscribed shares. Issued shares according to our question is 10,000. Subscribed shares according to our question is 20,000. Therefore, we have to take ratio of subscribed is to issued. Children, subscribed should be written on the left side and issued should be written on the right side. Then only you arrive at the correct ratio. So 20,000 is subscribed shares. You can see here subscribed shares 20,000 and 10,000 is issued shares. So if we reduce it to lowest term, the ratio comes 2:1. This is proportionate allotment of shares in ratio 2:1, which means those applicants who applied for 2 shares were allotted only 1 share. This is the meaning of ratio 2:1. Or we can say those who applied for 500 shares were allotted 250 shares in the ratio 2:1. Or I can say those who applied for 100 shares were allotted 50 shares by the company. So it is very important for us to take the correct ratio by writing subscribed is to issued and then finding the lowest term, which is the ratio in which the allotment is done. I hope this is understood. Now in this case, the company is not refunding anything, so we will have a change in the second entry. So let's go to the entries again, and proportionate allotment affects three entries: entry number 1, entry number 2, and then entry number 4. Whereas in the previous case of refund, there were two entries affected, 1 and 2 only. So let us discuss. The first entry goes again same: bank account debit to equity share application account, being application money received on 20,000 equity shares at rupees 20 per share, which makes for debit 4 lakh and for credit also 4 lakh. The second entry goes equity share application account debit 4 lakh to equity share capital account to equity share allotment account 2 lakh each, being proportionate allotment made to all the applicants in the ratio 2:1 and surplus money transferred to share capital. So children, you can see the change here. Nothing has been refunded. Instead, the company has made proportionate allotment in the ratio 2:1, and that surplus money is transferred to equity share allotment account. I'll explain you this. If suppose you have applied for 100 shares, then you have sent 100 multiplied by 20 rupees, that is 2000 rupees to the company, and that is a part of this first entry, bank account to share application account. Now since the company has allotted you shares in the ratio 2:1, that means you were given 50 shares only because you applied for 100 shares. So on 50 shares, 50 multiplied by 20, 1000 rupees will be transferred to share capital. In this 2 lakh here, your 1000 is on 50 shares, and the remaining 50 shares, 20 rupees, that is 1000, is transferred to the next immediate installment, which is equity share allotment. In the previous case it was refunded, but in proportionate allotment no money is refunded. It is transferred to the next immediate installment to application, and we all know that after application the next installment is share allotment, and this is how the entry is framed. So your 1000 surplus money is in this 2 lakh, which company will call from all the shareholders when it makes the third entry due. And now let us see the third entry. Third entry says equity share allotment account debit to equity share capital account, being allotment money due on 10,000 equity shares at rupees 30 per share. This is the same entry as it has been in a previous question. So the amount goes 3 lakh, 3 lakh. Now when the time comes to receive the allotment money and we show it through fourth entry, we have to adjust the previous 2 lakh surplus which has been transferred to share allotment in the second entry. This 2 lakh will be adjusted when the company will receive allotment money, and for receiving allotment money the fourth entry is same: bank account debit to equity share allotment account 1 lakh, 1 lakh. Now how is this 1 lakh? From this 2 lakh we need to from this 3 lakh which is due, company will subtract this 2 lakh. 2 lakh is already transferred to allotment account. This is the surplus money. So this much amount will be deducted from the amount due 3 lakh, and finally it is 1 lakh. I hope this is understood. And the adjustment says being allotment money received and surplus application money adjusted. Surplus means this 2 lakh. I hope this is clear. So proportionate allotment affects entry number 1, 2 and 4. This is to be taken care, and rest entries for first call due, first call money received, final call money due and final call money received will remain the same. So this was proportionate allotment of shares. Now we go with the third case or alternative, which says partial refund and proportionate allotment to the remaining applicants. This is combination of the previous two alternatives. Now before we discuss the entries, we will look into a small working notes, and it goes as follows. What I've done is I have again kept a small calculation where we all know that according to question issued shares was 10,000, subscribed shares by the public is 20,000. Now from this 20,000 shares, I have assumed that company has rejected 5,000 shares. I repeat, from this 20,000 shares, company has rejected 5,000 shares. So what we do is 20 minus 5, the number of shares left is 15,000, and you have to take the ratio 15,000 is to 10,000. Again, your subscribed shares was 20, which is after rejection of 5,000, the amount comes as 15,000, and the issued shares should always be on the right. So 15,000 is to 10,000 gives us ratio 3 is to 2. This is pro rata allotment. So those who applied for 3 shares will be allotted 2 shares by the company. Those who will apply for 30 shares will get 20 shares by the company. This is the importance of this ratio 3 is to 2. Now with this working in mind, let us go into our entries. Remember, out of 20,000 shares, 5,000 shares have been rejected, and the pro rata allotment is made on 15,000 shares. Again, entry number 1 goes same. Bank account debit to equity share application account 4 lakh 4 lakh, being application money received on 20,000 equity shares at rupees 20 per share. Entry number 2, equity share application account debit to equity share capital account to equity share allotment account to bank account, being money refunded on 5,000 shares and proportionate allotment made to remaining applicants 15,000 in the ratio 3 is to 2. Now, how will you bifurcate the amount? This equity share capital is on 10,000 shares into 20 rupees, which makes it 2 lakh. Hope this is clear. There's no change. Now, equity share allotment is on 5,000 shares into 20 rupees, which makes 1 lakh. And to bank is also on 5,000 shares into 20, which is rupees 1 lakh. You remember 5,000 shares were rejected. So rejection is always the money refunded, which goes to bank account, case alternative 1. Now out of that 15,000, 10,000 shares were allotted. So 15 minus 10, that 5,000 is in equity share allotment account. 5,000 into 20, and that also makes 1 lakh. Hope this is clear. Now the third entry will be for making allotment due, which you all know now. Equity share allotment account debit 3 lakh to equity share capital account 3 lakh, being allotment money due on 10,000 equity shares at rupees 30 per share. And finally the fourth entry, which is affected, bank account debit to equity share allotment account, being allotment money received and excess application money adjusted. So what was excess application money? This is the excess application money, equity share allotment account 1 lakh when we transferred to capital. So 3 lakh due minus 1 lakh, 3 minus 1 is equal to 2 lakh, and this is what is the final change in your third alternative, where there was partial refund of 5,000 shares and remaining proportionate allotment. So this is oversubscription of shares, children, with the three alternatives which we have discussed one by one. You need to very carefully go through it once again, read the theory, and also the content from the book. It is given in the book also very clearly. It has been explained. It has been explained in the book. So you must go through it. You must go through it carefully and then solve these questions solve these questions for the topic oversubscription of shares. I would suggest first go with the example and then you can go with exercise questions. So today here we end the class. Make your effort to understand this, and when we have online class we will discuss more about it. Thank you. Have a nice day. God bless you all.